About 2.5 years ago, my apartment was broken into during a camping trip. Some things were stolen, including multiple firearms. A year and a half ago, one of my firearms was found with some kids selling crack in a small city right over the border of the next state. The plea deals fell through, and the girl the cops had initially mentioned was going to trial. I receive a letter in the mail telling me of the court date and location, but it is explicitly not a summons. Whatever, I want my gun back sooner than later, so I go. Both the prosecutor and the assistant prosecutor are out sick, one with COVID. They make us hang around for a while for no reason, and eventually I just leave. They didn't like that. But whatever, being there was legally voluntary. I tell them they can mail me the new date and I'll deal with it then. 3 weeks go by, and here we are this morning. I get home from work and I check my mail. There are 2 letters, one for the first girl and another's for a guy I know just as an accomplice from the updates about the girl. His trial is today, and hers is tomorrow. I go to the courthouse 40 minutes away and let them know I'm here. Everything is fine. They bring in the jury pool and spend 2 hours getting down to 7 jurors. The trial starts and we're just patiently waiting. 4 cops and 1 other civilian victim witness. They tell us no worries. This will be super quick. They basically just need to ask if it's the firearm I reported stolen, and I'll be on my way. They call in all the cops, who are getting paid this whole time, first. It's now 1 p.m. I've been up for 24 hours, on 3 hours of sleep the day before after working a 12-plus hour overnight shift. My entire body is cramping. I'm super uncomfortable. I'm exhausted. I last ate at 10 p.m. The assistant district attorney comes out and tells us they're taking an hour lunch break. I tell her I can't stay and I need to leave. She tells me I'm not allowed to. I already presented as a witness to the judge. I've been summoned. I hadn't. They can charge me with this or that. One of the cops tells me they could detain me. The judge could order me after I point out I haven't been summoned, and again, this is voluntary. Basically, they try and strong-arm me when all I want to do is go home. I point out that this guy isn't even who I was told was found with my gun. The assistant DA starts explaining how, oh no, he totally was. I don't know who you heard that from. My local PD mentioned the girl by name originally, giving me all these details about the case. Then re-emphasizing I really must stay, or I'll be charged with a crime. Don't worry though, we'll get you in right away, so you can leave soon. Soon being in more than an hour minimum. Here's the thing, the judge issued a sequester order first thing in the morning before jury selection. I say fine and wait. Here comes the single greatest act of malicious compliance I've ever committed in my life. All the attorneys come in, all the jury comes in. The judge makes me swear to tell the truth. I do. As soon as I finish, I blurt out the prosecutor broke the sequester and was telling me about the case during the break. Stop. Everyone except the lawyers out, including me. Eventually, they bring just me back in. The judge again makes me swear to tell the truth, confirms I understand what's happening, tells me the importance of a fair trial, maybe don't witness tamper then, and explains that witnesses are never to volunteer information and are to only answer the questions. You've been summoned, and it's a legal obligation. I let him finish and mention that I've never been summoned. He says, then I'm ordering you. Understood? Yes. Everyone comes back in. We all take our oaths again. The prosecutor that was threatening me starts asking questions. Here's the thing, I swore to tell the truth. I never agreed to tell it in a way that makes her life easier. She asked me some basic questions, name, age, what I do for work, etc. Then she gets into the actual questions. Do I own weapons? Did I report any stolen around this date? Did I own one of this model? Did I report this model stolen, etc.? Is this your gun? It certainly looks like it. Did the ex-police contact you when it was recovered? No. Who did? Police Department, my local PDU. Did they give you any details regarding how it was recovered? They said it was allegedly used in a crime by girls named defense objects, and the judge strikes that from testimony. By now, the DEA is realizing that she's given me too much leeway and starts asking for yes or no answers. Eventually asks if I'd recognize the serial number if I saw it. I tell her no, and that roughly sums up my questions from her. Then, it's the defendant's turn, and it goes exactly as you would expect by now. I answer truthfully, but in favorable wording. You said it looks like your gun, but you can't confirm. I'd need to compare the serial number against the police report or the gun shop which still has it on record. Do you know who stole your firearm? No. Do you recognize? No. She asked a few more plausible deniability questions and then I was free to go. I can't wait to be back tomorrow for the girls' trial. I'll probably be much less malicious, but I know the day will be nervous when she sees me. Court is officially over, so the sequester order is no longer in effect. Good times, and don't worry, if I botched her case in this regard, that kid had more than enough charges. He should have taken the plea deal. So there I am, just minding my own business, right? Chilling on a lazy Sunday afternoon, tinkering with my ride in the driveway. Got this slick old Mustang, my pride and joy. Now, this ain't no mint condition, show-off kind of car. Nah, it's got character. A few dents, some rust here and there, but she roars like a beast on the road. So, picture this. I'm under the hood, greasy hands and all, when this lady, a real piece of work, marches up my driveway. She's got that, I want to speak to the manager haircut, you know the one. And I can feel the entitlement radiating off her like heat waves on black asphalt. This Karen, let's call her entitled Karen, for the sake of the story. She takes one look at my Mustang and decides it's got to be hers. No pleasantries, just straight to the point. "Hey, you selling this thing?" she demands, finger pointing at my baby. I look up, wiping my hands on an old rag. Nah, not in the market. It's my ride, you know? She squints at me like I just spoke an alien language. Well, everything's got a price. How much? Now, I've been down this road before. People see a classic car and think they can snag it for a bargain. Not happening with me, though. Not for sale, lady. Find another set of wheels. She doesn't like that, not one bit. The entitlement in her eyes morphs into pure annoyance. "Look, I want this car. How about I give you $1,000 cash, right now?" I chuckle. $1,000. Sweetheart, this car is worth way more than that. And I ain't parting with it for chump change. Entitled, Kern's not used to being told, no. That's clear. She huffs, crosses her arms, and gives me the death stare. "I demand to speak to your manager." I can't help but laugh at that. "Lady, I'm the manager of this establishment, and the answer's still no." Now, you'd think that's where the story ends, right? But no, buckle up for this wild ride. A couple of hours later, I'm taking the Mustang for a spin around the block, just enjoying the sound of that engine. When I pull back into my driveway, what do I see? Entitled Karen, on the phone, looking like she's ready to chew nails and spit them out. I park, and she stomps over. I called the cops. "You're going to regret not selling me this car for a reasonable price." I raise an eyebrow. "Regret? Sweetheart, you have no idea." Sure enough, a police cruiser rolls up, and out steps Officer Daniels, a good buddy of mine from high school. We exchange nods as he approaches. "Everything all right here?" he asks, eyeing entitled Karen. I shrug. Just a little misunderstanding, officer. This lady wants to buy my Mustang for peanuts, and I'm not having it." Officer Daniels shoots me a grin. Classic. "Well, ma'am, he's within his rights. You can't force someone to sell their property." Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. Entitled Karen's face turns as red as a lobster. She starts yelling at Officer Daniels, telling him he's not doing his job, that I'm scamming her or whatever. Officer Daniels, being the patient guy he is, tries to calm her down. "Ma'am, there's nothing I can do. It's his car, his choice." But she's having none of it. And here's where it gets crazy. Out of nowhere, entitled Karen takes a swing at Officer Daniels. I'm standing there, jaw on the floor, as this woman actually assaults a cop because she didn't get her way. Daniels, being the professional he is, dodges the punch like he's in a damn kung fu movie. Next thing you know, he's got her pinned down on the hood of his cruiser, handcuffs out and everything. I'm just standing there, still trying to process what the heck just happened. I never thought refusing to sell my Mustang would turn into a full-blown action movie. People from the neighborhood start gathering, phones out, recording the whole thing. I'm thinking, this is going to be all over the internet by tonight. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels is reading entitled Karen Her Rights, and she's still spewing nonsense about how she'll sue everyone and their grandma. The other officer in the cruiser, a young guy, shoots me a look like, "You see this every day?" I just shake my head still in disbelief. Nah, man, this is a first. The moral of the story? Don't mess with a guy in his Mustang, and definitely don't try to strong. Arm a cop into making a sale. Life's too short for that kind of drama, you know? I'm a musical theater student at a pretty prestigious performing arts university, and to help pay for my course. Alongside, I work part-time in retail. We have a lot to learn, and I normally work more than is actually required of me. And so, after asking permission from my manager, I take a folder with me to work. This contains scripts, song lyrics, etc., so I can study them when there's a lull in customers. I put the name of the school on the front of my folder as well as mine because whilst if I leave it on public transport, people probably won't know my name. They probably will know that of the schools and could come and drop it off. Now we're done with that, I can move on to the actual story. I was working the registers today and it was reasonably quiet for the first half of my shift, so I had my folder out to work on a script. Normally, the folder is in my bag, but when I can catch a break, I take it out. However, I was called into the stockroom, and as it was quiet, I just tucked my folder away and went to see what was up. I was only away for a few minutes, but like it often does, those few minutes everyone decided they wanted to pay. Our location is understaffed at the best of times, so nobody could take my place, and if they could, I knew I wouldn't be away for long, so I left my register unguarded. I returned to the discovery that my precious folder was nowhere to be seen. I panic, and whilst trying to serve the customer who has probably been waiting long enough, I look around and down the line to see if I can spot anyone who looks like they have it. Enter EM and her similarly entitled child. She looks nice enough from first glance, standing near the back of the line. Probably glad that her kid, who couldn't have been over 12, was finally quiet, even if it was with the use of my folder of scripts. There was nothing in there that could have been that harmful, so I decided not to make a scene and instead wait for her to leave and grab her on the way out. My plan works well, and as she's about to leave, I pull her and the kid to the side. I asked the kid politely if they could give it back to me as I need it for school. They refused. EM got mad that I'd even requested to have my own property back, saying that if it was that important, I should have not left it out for anyone to take it. My patience is already wearing thin with this woman. I tell her that it's common etiquette not to take things from a place you shouldn't even be touching. She argues back that her kid doesn't know better. I am done at this point and tell her, using one of my last threads of calmness, to give me back my folder. I've been in retail for 6 months now. I know how entitled some people can be, but I was not expecting what came out of this woman's mouth next. Fine, but we'll need compensation. You go to a good school, don't you? Well then, my little baby is a budding actor. Let them sit in on a class to gain some skills. Okay, this is where my patience was snapping, I tell her, in simple, slow words that I do not own the course, I only attend it. I can't control who gets to see what goes on, and if I did, I would definitely not let her kid in, seeing how they treat other people's belongings. She scoffed, starting to leave while saying something about me clearly not caring enough about my future to even consider it, as her darling was going to be a star. How could I be so rude? And then I properly snapped, suddenly coming up with my last idea to save my folder. I mean, I only don't want them to have it because there's some stuff in there that's not really for kids, you know? The look that passed onto her face was priceless as she snatched the folder from the kid, threw it at my feet, and stormed out, muttering something about unacceptable behavior, and of course, the dreaded "I will be speaking to your manager." All in all, it was an experience I don't think I'll forget for a while. This happened in 2015. I was 18 and about to move out on my own. Prior to this, I had a savings account my parents had helped me set up, and I'd been putting money into it any way I could for 3 years. Birthday money, odd jobs, part-time after-school job washing dishes, all that stuff, and I'd managed to get a few thousand into it. I'd really been wanting to move out because I have 2 little brothers that absolutely drive me up the wall. My parents loved making me the live-in babysitter whenever I wasn't working, which is why I used the excuse to work as much as I could. When the time came that I wanted to move out, my parents said they wanted me to stay because they needed my help and were wanting me to start paying rent to help with bills. But I held my ground that I wanted to live on my own. I'd already paid the deposit and first month's rent on an apartment without telling them. And by that point, I had a local full-time job. So I was set to move out after about another month. So when they found that out, they freaked out and told me to get out that day if I wanted to be on my own so bad. I packed what I could and left to go to my aunt and uncle's house. It was a 4-mile ride with a bicycle that I had a small trailer hooked to. When I told my aunt and uncle what happened, they were very angry and took me in right away. A couple days later, I went to withdraw all the money from my account and saw that it was empty. My parents had come in the day prior and cleaned it out. All the bank could do was give me a balance statement saying so. Because my parents were co-signers on the account, that meant they had access to the money too. I was livid and immediately told my aunt and uncle as soon as I could. They were beyond angry too. Then my aunt got an idea and started calling up other people in the family to tell them what my parents had done. It wasn't long before the chaos had hit the fan. My other aunts and uncles, cousins and grandparents were all furious and let my parents have it. I don't know what kind of excuses my parents gave them, but it didn't work. The next time I saw my parents, they'd showed up to my aunt and uncle's house to yell at me. When they saw me, my mother threw some money at me and called me an ungrateful brat for telling everyone. My aunt then said it was her who told everyone, not me. I looked at the money they'd thrown and it was just some kid playing with money my little brothers had. I asked where the real money was, and my parents said they'd already used it to pay off a credit card. I said I wanted the money they stole back for real, but they refused and said it was their right to take it since they'd opened the account for me and I still have a job. My expenses at the moment were fine because my next paycheck was deposited in a new account, and I was able to save until the apartment was ready. But my parents took a lot of heat from my aunt and uncle until they left. My cousin also used to babysit for my parents when I was busy, and she not only refused to do so again after what they did, but told me she put out the word to other teen babysitters on social media to avoid my parents because they were thieves. By the time I was living in my apartment, my parents finally couldn't take the social stigma anymore and met me to compromise. They said they couldn't pay me back all at once and asked for a payment plan. I had the exact number of the amount they'd stolen and said I wanted it all back. They actually tried to haggle me down to half the total, but I refused anything but the full amount. Now I barely ever see my parents, let alone speak to them. And they clearly still blame me for what happened too because their reputations in the family never recovered. But I don't care. They were thieves that paid the piper.